Folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make this video outside. It has been pouring down rain the last hour or so. It really started right about the time I decided to make another video. And so I kind of waited it out and I thought, man, it's getting to that point. I may just have to do an indoor video, which isn't too bad because I'm working on, as you've seen, getting that set up better. But I still like doing them out here. And just so those, I don't know if this helps because everyone seems to think that this is a green screen. There, it's not a green screen. Things that I'm going to talk to you today about, stuff in the news. Some of it seems a little random. And I don't think that it is. I think that, and this is something that I've been talking about a while, and there are some others out there, some of you, some others on YouTube and in various forms of media that are on this same page, and then some of you think that this is a little too far to the extreme. But I'm sticking to my guns on this. I believe what we're watching happen isn't just the collapse of an economy or the collapse of the supply chain or the collapse of food systems. It's not just the collapse of the US dollar, the Federal Reserve. It's not just the collapse of the United States. It's not even really the collapse of the Western world. What we're watching is really a global collapse. That is why we're seeing this massive global effort, and we have been for the last several years. And they've been working on this plan for 30, 40 years or more. Because they knew that this was coming. They knew that the policies and the economic policies, the political policies, and everything that was going on made them very wealthy in the immediate, but had no long-term strategy for keeping it going. And it's not capable of going much further. And so that's why we're seeing the Great Reset and the Agenda 2030 and Agenda 21 and all these things starting to play out before our eyes because they know it's all going to collapse. And they're hoping that their plans will be there in place to take the place of everything that's happening. And it's not just that it's collapsing, it's that they're orchestrating the collapse. I mean, would it happen naturally without their intervention? Yes, I believe so it would. But their intervention isn't just speeding up the process, but they're guiding the collapse. Imagine, and I've used this analogy many times, imagine a pilot in a plane. And the plane is crashing, and he's realized that there's nothing he can do to stop it. That plane is coming down. But what he can do is possibly guide that plane and kind of control it so that it will crash where he wants it to crash, and it'll crash possibly in the way that he wants it to crash. And I believe that's what's happening, and that's what we're watching. And so I want to point some things out that are happening more and more in the news, that is directing us down that path. Now, before we get started with that, we're all stocking up, and we all should be stocking up. And I want to mention once again that if you're wanting, and this may not be for everyone, I get that. Not everyone wants this stuff. Not everyone, this works for everyone or can afford it. But for those of you that can afford it, those of you that want it, emergency freeze-dried food is a very quick way to stock up on your food. You can buy a 3-month, 6-month, a 1-year supply of freeze-dried food. It'll last 20 to 30 years. This is restaurant quality food. It's made in the United States. It's shipped discreetly, meaning that no one's going to know what you're getting when it gets shipped to you. And right now they're running a sale that is pretty much, this is the cheapest price that it's been since the whole health crisis started. It's almost back to those prices. This isn't going to last very long. There's a link down in the description below to My Patriot Supply, and you can find some really good prices on stuff there if that works for you. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying that's not in my plan. I do things another way. I can vegetables out of my garden. I stock up by going to various grocery stores. This is a different plan and a different way, and it's a way that you can get it all at once without having to do all the traveling around. So the link is in the description below. The stuff that we're going to talk about, again, we're all over the board here, but it really all points one direction. The stuff that's going on in Europe is not good, okay? We've been talking about this off and on for a week or so now. The energy crisis, the economic crisis, everything. There's been rioting and protesting throughout Europe for the last few months now. And it's more and more. We talked about, I think yesterday, of how about 60% of businesses and companies in the United Kingdom is on the verge of bankruptcy because they can't afford their utility bills. Countless businesses all over Europe is in the same predicament. People can't even afford the utility bills now, and we're not even into winter time. It's just going to get worse. In Sweden, there is rampant electricity prices are causing Swedish companies or Swedish farmers to not produce tomatoes. In fact, one of the largest or the largest tomato producer in the country of Sweden has completely shut down, gone out of business, because they can't afford to keep it up. Now, these are tomatoes that are produced in a big fashion under greenhouses, so that takes a lot of energy to keep them warm. They produce them throughout the winter, and they're not able to do that. So not only are we seeing an economic problem here, this is also food. Food is not being produced. This is more food. How many calories are being taken out of the market in Europe because of just this one company? And it's not the only one. More businesses being shut down. There was one either last week or the week before over in Europe. It was one of the largest aluminum factories that manufacture aluminum had to shut down because they couldn't afford the utility bill. Here we go. The second largest steel maker in the world shuts down its plant in Europe. Why? Because they cannot afford their electric bill. They can't afford to pay the utilities. It's being shut down. Second largest in the world. That's definitely going to have an impact in Europe and probably elsewhere. If this steel isn't being manufactured any longer in the United Kingdom, or in Europe, excuse me, then others in Europe are going to have to make up for that, and they may not be able to make up for it enough, and so places in the United States or in other countries are going to have to be imported in. So in other words, it's causing less supply with a continued increase in demand, so it's going to cause prices to most likely go up. Here's an article here. You realize what's happening yet? And this article here goes into several sources showing that farmers all across Europe, they're having to throw away their harvests. Here's a Twitter post, and I did some research, and this seems to be pretty accurate, and there's more than just this. But Norwegian farmers are being forced to throw away their harvest because they cannot afford the electricity to store the food. So you have to realize, some of you that aren't familiar with farming, especially when it comes to vegetable farms, a lot of times there's a little bit of a time period between it being harvested and being sent to wherever it goes, the factory, to turn it into a can of soup or whatever it is, or a can of green beans. And so this stuff has to be stored many times. And a lot of times it has to be stored using electricity, using natural gas, whatever it is. Sometimes they flash freeze it on site, and then they store it in freezers until it gets shipped off and to the factory or wherever its final destination is. These farmers are not able to actually store their harvests, and so there's lots of reports all over Europe of farmers that are throwing tons and tons of food, of crops away, or just letting them lie in the fields because they can't afford the fuel costs or the electricity costs to harvest or to hold the harvest afterwards, to store it. This is very similar, if you remember, back during the initial parts of the whole health crisis, where we saw farmers dumping lots of milk. We've mentioned that several times on here. Potatoes going to waste, all kinds of stuff. Well, it's happening also in Europe. Again, this is not going to lead to a good place, because we're already seeing food shortages and tightening of food supplies, and a real struggle, maybe not critical in every area, but definitely a struggle pretty much across the board of the world producing the same amount of food as it once did. Or at least that's the story we're told. In the United Kingdom, 1.7 million households have spoken out and said that they are no longer paying their monthly energy bill. 1.7 million. Now, be interesting to see how this plays out. Will they hold true to that? Will they get shut off and 1.7 million be without power? I don't know what the laws are in the United Kingdom, but here in the United States and most municipal areas and cities, if you don't pay your electric bill or utility bills after usually 2 to 3 months, then the health department deems that it's unfit to live in that home, and then the county or the city can actually take your property. So is this another way for you won't own anything and be happy? We'll have to wait and see on this one. Switching gears a little bit, OPEC Plus. And OPEC Plus is OPEC plus Russia. That's right. It's a new venture and agreement that they have. They have decided and announced that they're cutting their production, global production, by 100,000 barrels of crude oil a day. Now, 100,000 barrels isn't really a massive amount on the global stage. In fact, it's really kind of a drop in the bucket. But what a lot of people feel is that this is more for show, letting the world know that even though there's all these crunches and crises and people are paying more, they're not going to continue to put out what is needed around the world. And so we're already seeing prices of crude oil jump just today. Something I haven't talked about really on here is the flooding in Pakistan. It's biblical level flooding. There's an estimate that somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/3 of Pakistan has experienced major damage, casualty to people, to homes, to businesses, to crops because of this massive flooding. It is absolutely devastating, and the death toll just seems to continue to rise. Well, there's other things that are at play here that's going to cause actually some global damage. Look at this. Pakistan produces 5% of global cotton, 2.5% of global wheat, and it accounts for 9% of global rice prices. These floods will have a major impact on global markets. And if you look at the maps that are out there where most of this flooding is, it's also in predominantly the agricultural areas of the country, because if you think about it, Pakistan has a lot of mountainous regions, and the areas, the low-lying areas, which is where all the farming is also the areas where the water runs to and floods. And so they're expecting some major damages to their markets and to food, but also into the export, because as I just showed you, they export a significant amount. I know you can say 2.5%, 9%. Those are single-digit numbers, man. They're single-digit numbers. It's a small country, and we're already dealing with a global market when it comes to agriculture that's already hurting, with Afghanistan, with Ukraine taken out of play, and Russia and other countries that are struggling, and then the droughts that's been happening. The United States even is the projection of harvest is a little less, and next year even less. They're saying that the export markets next year will at least be $5 billion less than this year. So when you take everything into consideration, these numbers coming out of Pakistan are actually pretty significant numbers. And once again, it's all just signs that we're seeing a collapse unfold before our eyes. And you have to understand, and many of you know this because you kind of stay on top of things, the stuff that I'm telling you is really just a drop in the bucket. I'm out here kind of sifting through it all to try to pick out the things that stand out to me. You can watch several other channels here on YouTube, and they're doing the same thing, and many of us are talking about very different things. I mean, it's all connected. You can watch another channel that does this kind of stuff, and they're talking about stuff today that I'm not talking about. And it's because there's so much happening, and you put it all together, and yes, we are seeing a collapse in progress. I believe it's been foretold. It's biblical, and it's been predicted for decades. And I believe that that's really what their plan is. Again, shifting gears just a little bit to the politics side, MSNBC. I know we all love MSNBC, and we know it's the most honest reporting out there. Okay, we all know that. I mean, I faithfully watch MSNBC on a daily basis. Anyways, the news clips of this I'm not going to play on here because I'll get slapped really hard for a copyright violation. But if you want to watch them, I have posted them over on tphnetwork.com. That's our website. It's very much like a social media network. Well, it is a social media network. It's a free speech platform, and I've posted the videos over there if you want to watch them. And trust me, the videos are a lot worse than this. report here from Zero Hedge that MSNBC declares all Republicans evil. Now, stop right there, because I know a lot of you consider yourselves the same way that I do. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm just a very independent person. I don't adhere to a political party. I adhere to morals, biblical, traditional, constitutional morals of how to take care of my family, live in my community, and how a government should behave. And to me, it's not about the political party. But as I've said on here before, they don't care about that. They consider conservative, right-leaning, right-wing, and Republican all in the same barrel, okay? So when they say this, they're talking about all conservatives and probably most all libertarians too, especially the little L libertarians. MSNBC declares all Republicans evil. And they say in this video clip that if you can see on TPH Network, they're not just saying the far right, they say all Republicans. And a threat to democracy. And then they say that we are in fact at war with them, meaning they are at war with us, and that the conservatives are at war with them. They absolutely call it a war, and they talk very specifically about it being a real war. Now let's get on to the people that are behind a lot of this. Yes, the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve researchers predict 2 adoption scenarios for crypto and decentralized finances in new report. And so, without boring you, because I read it and it's boring, you know, most of this kind of stuff is, they did this research on what would it take for people to adopt cryptocurrencies and decentralized finances as part of their just normal everyday life. Not investments, but actual currency that they're using. And of course, they went on to say that one of the big problems is the risk with cryptocurrencies and decentralized finances, that they have. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of good with the, blockchain and all the different cryptocurrencies, but there's a lot of risk too. And so at the very end, in fact, this is the very last paragraph of this article. It says, finally, they get to the point. They get to the point here at the very last paragraph. Finally, the creation of a central bank digital, that becomes available on public, permissionless blockchains, such as Ethereum, may also serve to reduce volatility. And of course, this is their nice candy-coated with icing and a cherry on top of saying that if you want things to be better, just wait until we issue our CBDC. And then it'll all be fixed. There won't be any more risk. Everything can just be kumbaya and all better. You won't have what's very left, the little bits and pieces left of your freedoms, but it'll be safety. And you know what the founding fathers said? Give me safety over security. Remember those quotes? If I could die 1,000 deaths for my country, I would, as long as I had safety. You've heard those quotes before, because above all else, above freedom and personal responsibility, the liberty to raise your family in the way that you believe that God meant for us to raise them, as long as the government keeps us safe, well, that's all that matters. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order and to be serious about it, and not just on a personal level, but in a community level. Because really the only way that we can stand up against this is by building networks of communities that work together, whether it be behind the scenes or even out in the open, building, bartering networks and assistance, mutual assistance groups all along the way. All of this is very critical to the things that are happening today. It's one of the few ways that we can physically survive what's getting ready to happen. Folks, get your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.